Stop growing tomatoes. I'm serious. While you're out there staking them, fertilizing nonstop, and watering twice a day, there's a whole category of forgotten vegetables that most people haven't planted in over 100 years, and they're easier, tougher, more nutritious, and they actually love being ignored. These plants don't beg for attention. They don't collapse when the weather changes, and they don't punish you for missing a day. One of the vegetables on this list was so aggressive it was banned in parts of Europe. Not because it was dangerous, but because it grew too well. I'll show you exactly how to control it and why it's still worth planting. And another one produces 10 times more food per square foot than anything you're growing right now, yet seed companies quietly stopped selling it. These are the vegetables that fed entire generations. Then they vanished from modern gardens. Today, we're bringing them back. And by the end of this video, you'll never look at your garden the same way again. Before we dive in, do me a quick favor. If you want a garden that practically grows itself, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I post videos every week for people who want more food with less work. And let me ask you this, which vegetable gives you the most frustration right now? Tomatoes that crack, lettuce that bolts, beans that barely produce? Drop it in the comments. I read every one, and I make videos around what you struggle with most. And if you've ever felt like gardening is harder than it should be, hit that like button. Alright, let's get into it. Let's start with a plant most people rip out of their garden without a second thought. Purslane. It creeps along the ground, spreads fast, and shows up exactly where you didn't plant it, which is why it earned the label weed. But here's the irony. Purslane is one of the most nutritious vegetables on the planet. Gram for gram, it contains more omega-3 fatty acids than many fish oils, along with vitamin C, magnesium, and powerful antioxidants. And it thrives on neglect. Purslane doesn't care about poor soil. It laughs at heat. It survives drought that kills tomatoes and lettuce. While other vegetables demand daily attention, purslane quietly expands, providing tender, slightly lemony leaves you can harvest again and again. Salads, stir-fries, soups, the more you cut it, the more it grows. This wasn't accidental. For thousands of years, purslane was deliberately cultivated as a food crop. It didn't disappear because it failed. It disappeared because it was too easy and too hard to monetize. But that's just the beginning. Because once you realize how many edible weeds we've forgotten, the next plant makes even more sense. Good King Henry. This is a perennial vegetable that fed Europeans for centuries. Long before spinach became fashionable, Good King Henry filled that role and did it better. Once planted, it comes back year after year, producing tender spring shoots, spinach-like leaves, and edible flower buds. No replanting. No fuss. It thrives in partial shade, tolerates poor soil, and asks for almost nothing in return. While modern greens bolt and fail the moment conditions aren't perfect, Good King Henry just keeps producing. Its leaves are rich, mild, and versatile. And because it's perennial, it becomes more productive as the years pass. This is the kind of plant that turns gardening into harvesting. And yet, most people have never heard of it. Now here's where things get really interesting. Because the next plant solves one of the biggest problems gardeners complain about. Malabar spinach. If you've ever tried growing spinach in summer, you know the frustration. It bolts, turns bitter, collapses in heat. Malabar spinach does the opposite. It loves heat. In fact, the hotter it gets, the faster it grows. Malabar spinach is a vigorous climbing green with thick, succulent leaves. Once established, it can produce massive amounts of edible greens all summer long, right when traditional spinach fails. Give it a trellis, a fence, or even a balcony railing, and it will climb upward, turning vertical space into food. It's also incredibly forgiving. Miss a watering? It survives. Poor soil? No problem. And because it grows vertically, it's perfect for small gardens and containers. One plant can supply greens for an entire household through the hottest months of the year. So look at the pattern. Purslane covers the ground. Good King Henry anchors the seasons. Malabar spinach climbs into unused space. 3 forgotten plants. 3 different strategies, 1 shared truth. The easiest food to grow is often the food we were taught to ignore. Now let's move from leafy greens to something most modern gardens are missing entirely: roots. And the first one might be the most unfairly forgotten of all: skirret. Skirret was once prized as a sweet, reliable root vegetable long before carrots dominated the table. It grows as a perennial clump, sending up slender, cream-colored roots that taste mildly sweet, almost like a cross between parsnip and chestnut. Once established, skirret comes back every year, producing larger harvests with minimal care. It tolerates cold, handles wet soil better than most roots, and doesn't demand perfect conditions. While modern gardeners struggle to coax carrots from compacted soil, skirret quietly thrives. And that leads perfectly to the next plant. Because before parsley was just a garnish, it was a root crop: Hamburg parsley. Unlike common leaf parsley, Hamburg parsley is grown for its thick, pale root, and it's incredibly versatile. The flavor is rich and savory, somewhere between parsley and parsnip. You can roast it, mash it, add it to soups, or slice it into stews. And the best part? You still get edible leaves while the root develops underground. It's a 2-for-1 crop that fits easily into small gardens and rewards patience with real substance. But if you think these roots are overlooked, wait until you hear about this one: salsify. Often called the oyster plant, salsify produces long, slender roots with a flavor that's surprisingly complex: mild, creamy, and faintly reminiscent of seafood. It thrives in cooler weather, improves in flavor after frost, and can be left in the ground until needed, turning your garden into a living pantry. Once planted, salsify readily reseeds itself, coming back year after year without much effort. So notice the pattern again. Skirret offers sweetness and reliability. Hamburg parsley delivers depth and versatility. Salsify brings storage and resilience. 3 roots that once fed generations, now quietly waiting to be rediscovered. Now we move into a group of plants that don't just survive, they outlast. Scorzonera, also known as black salsify, is one of the toughest root vegetables you've probably never grown. At first glance, it looks unremarkable: dark-skinned roots, grassy leaves, but beneath the soil is a rich, creamy flesh with a deep, nutty flavor. Scorzonera thrives in poor soil, shrugs off cold, and actually improves in taste after frost. Once established, it can be left in the ground and harvested as needed, turning winter into harvest season. Low maintenance, high reward. Exactly the opposite of modern vegetable trends. And speaking of plants that refuse to disappear, meet lovage. Lovage is what happens when celery decides to become permanent. This towering perennial returns every spring, growing taller and stronger each year. Its leaves, stems, and seeds are all edible, with a bold, savory flavor that instantly upgrades soups, stews, and broths. One plant can replace bundles of store-bought celery for years. It thrives in partial shade, tolerates neglect, and becomes more productive over time. Once planted, lovage isn't a vegetable you manage, it's one you rely on. But now, let's flip climates completely, because the next plant proves that aggressive growth can be a gift. Chayote. Chayote is a climbing squash that grows with shocking speed. In warm climates, a single plant can produce dozens, sometimes hundreds, of pear-shaped fruits with almost no effort. Give it a trellis, a fence, or even a tree, and it will take over, in the best way possible. Every part of the plant is edible: the fruit, the shoots, even the root. It's drought-tolerant, highly productive, and practically designed for lazy gardeners who want maximum output with minimal work. So look at the contrast. Scorzonera anchors the cold seasons. Lovage builds long-term reliability. Chayote explodes with abundance. Different forms, different climates, same lesson. The plants that last the longest are rarely the ones we're taught to plant.